Let's learn about how glucose is regulated inside organisms. Hormones are protein molecules that are secreted by glands into the bloodstream and have an effect on their target organs. Now, in the case of regulating glucose, the gland that releases the hormones is called the pancreas, and the target cells are respiring cells in the body, but also liver cells. Okay. Within the pancreas, we have two types of cell. We have alpha and beta islets of Langerhans cells. Or IOL, islets of Langerhans cells. When blood glucose levels are high, so for example, after a meal, our enzymes digest our large polysaccharides into smaller saccharides, monosaccharides, for example, glucose. So our glucose level in our blood will increase. This increase is detected by beta cells in the pancreas, beta islet of Langerhans cells in the pancreas, and as a result, they release a hormone called insulin. Insulin is a hormone, it's a protein, it has a very specific tertiary structure as a result of its very specific amino acid sequence. So remember the amino acid sequence with the range of R groups and their interactions will lead to a very specific tertiary structure for all hormones, including insulin. Now, insulin is then released into the bloodstream. On the surface of respiring cells, as well as liver cells, we will find insulin receptors. Now, insulin receptors have a shape that is complementary to the shape of insulin, and as a result, insulin will bind to these receptors. When insulin binds to these receptors, the permeability of the membrane changes. And as a result of the permeability of the membrane changing, as a result of the insulin binding to its receptor, the blood can now enter the cell, be it respiring cells or be it liver cells. When glucose enters the respiring cells, then respiration can take place. However, there may be more glucose than we need for respiration, which is the case. So what we now need to consider is what happens to the glucose when it enters the liver cells. As a result of the insulin binding to the receptor, the glucose can enter, and glucose is converted into a highly branched molecule with 1,4 and 1,6 glycosidic bonds called glycogen. This conversion of glucose to glycogen is facilitated by liver enzymes. And as a result, the glucose is brought back to a level that is within narrow limits. So this is homeostasis. Okay. Let's fast forward to about 3 or 4 hours after eating, or maybe when we're sleeping. Okay, we haven't just eaten. Our cells still need to respire. So our blood glucose level might be a bit low. This decrease in blood glucose is detected by the alpha islet of Langerhans cells in the pancreas. And as a result, the alpha cells will release a different hormone called glucagon. We will learn a lot more about the specific action of glucagon a bit later. But for now, we just need to appreciate that as a result of glucagon being released, then glycogen is broken down into glucose, and that glucose can then be released back into the blood, therefore increasing now the blood sugar level, blood glucose level, to the range that we need it to be. When this regulation doesn't work properly, we say that the patient has a condition called diabetes. There are two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is when the patient does not make any insulin of their own, and therefore will require artificial insulin, either via injection or an insulin pump. Okay, they might have a sensor detected, or they might do a blood test just to see what dose of insulin they need, as opposed when meal times are there. The other type of, so that's type 1 diabetes, where insulin is not made, so artificial insulin is needed. Type 2 diabetes is when insulin is made, but the receptors do not recognize the insulin. So the insulin does not bind to the insulin receptors. They're a slightly different shape. So their shape isn't complementary now to the insulin, and therefore this process of changing the permeability of the membrane isn't as efficient as it could be. Okay, this is referred to as insulin resistance. Okay, type 2 diabetes causes can be poor lifestyle choices, lack of exercise, obesity, high sugar diet. The treatments can be to increase exercise, to reduce the sugar and the carbohydrates in the diet, potentially take medication like metformin as well. Okay, so this is an overview of how our bodies regulate glucose when it's high, but also when it's low.